So we were studying a lot about differentiation, reading a lot of texts and learning. We had some speakers coming to talk about differentiation, and we were really excited about all that. But we didn't manage to. We didn't know how to put in practice. So one day Megan and Anne and Mariana and we decided to get together to talk about the way we were teaching and how we were helping the children to improve in the areas. And we came up with this idea of flag time together as a way of not taking the children out of their free choice or their free game to work with us individually. So it was a way that everybody was doing something specific for their needs and their readiness and all that, but all in the same time. So the main steps for flag time are assessment. So you really need to know your children, their interests and where they are in the rubric. Then you have to assign and group them into the right places, in the right activities. Then you give instructions, the directions of what they are going to do and what they're going to go through. Then they're going to have the learning happening throughout the activities. And then we are going to get together and we are going to monitor and they're going to self-assess how their learning was. So these are the main steps for flag time.
So I think that the first important premise would be that the teachers really need to know their children. They need to understand their children's interests. They need to know if they're ready to work on something or not, so that they can really challenge them at exactly the right level of challenge.
So I plan flag time really, as I said before, I have to really know the children, know what they like, what they're interested on, and where exactly they are in the rubric for all the subjects and the criteria that I need to help them develop. For this flag time, in one of the stations, one of the stations was the Jenga game, where we wrote the adding sentence, and they had I chose that because they were a group who really enjoy playing in a group, and they needed to work on their math skills. So they're not very good at adding yet, so they need to practice a bit more. So it was a way to have them playing a nice game, which is something they enjoy with their friends, and at the same time practice something they need to work on. The other station, I had 2 girls and a boy writing sentences. They had to read a sentence that didn't have the sentence checklist and then go through and write it in the proper way. They're really good at writing already, but they sometimes forget the checklists. So it was an activity that it would help them practice how to write sentences properly. And they also really enjoy sitting down, doing activities by themselves in a quiet place. So it was looking at that I thought of that activity for them. Then there was a girl outside running around looking for words. She's very active and she doesn't like to sit still in a chair. So it's an activity that helps her needs to work on her reading. So it was a way that I could manage to have her reading words around the garden, but walking around and trying and not sitting down reading cards, because that would be too boring for her. And I could see that she really enjoyed it. Then I had 3 boys building words, so they had to take a card, see the picture, and think of the word, and then build the word with the blocks, and then write it. The 3 of them are good at reading, but like simple words like CCVCs and CVCCs, but they have a very hard time with their handwriting. So it's a way of them, that they could practice their handwriting by sitting on the line and forming the letters correctly. And then the other 2 girls, they were at the cutting and sticking table, putting the numbers in order. They really enjoy activities. They had to cut and stick and organize and everything, but they were not very good with the numbers up to 10. So it was an activity thought that I chose something that interests them, that is to cut and stick and organize things, but using something that they need to work on, which are the numbers, to order the numbers and the values. So that's how I plan flag time. I think of the child as their needs, but also as, you know, what interests them, what would make them feel comfortable to have that little challenge, because every activity was a big challenge for them. Not too challenging, but not too easy. So just a little bit challenge so they could get interested and get involved and enjoy it. So I usually choose different learning objectives for each day, so they don't repeat the same learning objectives every day. Even though they need to continue working on it, I leave it for a couple of days later.
The second premise, I think, is formative assessment. Assessment needs to be happening continuously with the children. So if a teacher is going around the class while they're doing the activities, she's also assessing, or he's also assessing them. So it's a sort of, there's no assessment separate from the work. The learning and assessment is happening at the same time. And because it's happening at the same time, children are learning, but they're getting immediate and specific feedback on their learning.
So the most important part of flag time is definitely formative assessment. Is the way that you as a teacher, you get to see exactly where the children are and their development and everything. And for the children, they know where they are. They are engaged in their learning. So what I use to find out, to assess their learning, is peer assessments, checklists, and the learning journal, where they write about what they were learning and why they were doing that flag time.
And the third premise is that flag time for me is actually an example of individualized and personalized instruction. The grouping comes as a consequence of this planning for the personalized learning. And obviously, because the children are in groups, they're going to help each other, the peer assessment will happen, and so they're going to work as resources for one another's learning. But the fact that flag time is actually really personalized learning. So I did not expect children to love flag time like they do. I think that when we planned it at the beginning, we thought that, it would be really good because they would all be working at the same time on something, but they love flag time. They are so engaged and so motivated that it really surprised me. It came as a really pleasant surprise to all of us. I think it happens because the children never really know what's going to happen and who they're going to work with. This dynamic change in groupings, this flexibility in groupings and on what they're working on, I think that element of surprise really motivates them. It's really difficult for us to think as teachers that not everyone needs to do the same thing. So flag time is not a circuit where every child is going to go through the same activity, or it's not a rotation of activities. So there will be children that will never do some of the activities that we've planned in numeracy or literacy or fine motor skills. It depends a lot on what they need.